everyone, I'm Rebecca and welcome back to my sewing room. This week I'm going to be finishing up my spring 1950s tulip dress here, which I have been working on for the last couple of videos. If you have not seen those videos yet, I will link them down in the description below. But there are just a few elements left to this project that I need to complete before this is totally done. One of them I actually already did since the last video because I figured it was kind of a boring thing to do, and that is the hem. So yeah, I have already done the hem. I've actually just bound it with the double fold bias tape that I made, I think, a couple of videos now ago. I did wind up having to make significantly more of the bias tape since this is a very full circle skirt, but that's all it is. It's just double fold bias tape, and I think that it does a really nice job of bringing the bias tape contrast look all the way from the rest of the dress down to the hem. So that was all dandy. And then the other thing that I've kind of started on is the stem slash leaf motif for the tulip pockets. So I have over here just kind of pinned in place. I think it's a little bit cut off for you guys, but I've just kind of pinned in place like a stem leaf sort of swirl. I do think in looking at it that I want to raise up where the leaf is, but this is just being made out of single fold bias tape, and I just literally like drew on with a friction pen. I put it on the form, drew on kind of a rough, yes, I think this is where I want the stem to go sort of thing, and then pinned the bias tape on top of that so that I could roughly see what it looked like. And again, I'm pretty sure I want to raise up where the leaf spirals around by maybe like about an inch, inch and a half, something like that. And then I think it will be pretty perfect. And then what I will wind up doing is transferring that pen mark. I'll unpin the bias tape, and I'm going to transfer the pen mark over to the other side of the dress in the exact same manner that I transferred the pen marks of the pockets, which I showed you guys last week. So definitely, again, check out last week's video if you want to see that. But basically it involves folding it in half, putting pins through the fabric where I've already drawn out one of the lines, and then marking where those pins show up on the other side of the fabric. Very nice and simple, easy way to transfer things from one side to the other to make sure that they are even. So I will be taking care of that next. That will be quite easy. I'm just going to sew down both sides of the bias tape strip, and then that will be done. Then I have just a couple of other things to do on this, the main one being the tulip sleeves. So this week we are going to be figuring out how to draft tulip sleeves. So I will get more into that later when we get to that part of the project. And then the other part is making a belt. So belts are pretty simple to make. I have not yet checked since the last video if I actually have like a cover it yourself belt buckle kit, which is kind of what I'm hoping that I might have one. I kind of feel like I put one in my stash at some point, but I don't know if that's the case. So fingers crossed that I can find one of those, because they are pretty hard to find out in the wild. Like, that's not something that Joann's typically carries. And obviously if I want to finish this week, I can't really like go and order one online because then it won't be finished. So I'd have to make do with something else. It'd be fine, but yeah. So we will get to the belt as well. And then the one other question is if I need to fix the one fit issue that I had that I showed you guys in last week's video, which is that the collar, or not collar because there is no collar, but that the neckline kind of stands out and away from my back just a little bit for like the top, probably about this much of the center back. So I may or may not fix that. We'll see how I feel once I've kind of done everything else. If I feel like that is really detracting and I'm not liking the dress because of that, or if I feel like it's kind of a non-issue because my hair covers it anyway. So anyway, I am going to get into everything now, and again, I am going to start with that stem and leaf motif. This is what it looks like with both tulips on both tulip stems. So you can see stems there. I actually did it slightly differently than what I said because I decided to go ahead and sew the one on. This is about 1.5 inches higher than before, by the way. And I decided to go ahead and sew the one on, and then I, by feel, used that to make the other one echo instead of like doing the pin method like I mentioned. I just felt where that line of bias already was through the other side, drew that side on, and then laid that side on as well. And I think it looks so super cute. So So let's give an attempt at this tulip sleeve. I am going to be starting with this sleeve pattern because once upon a time, years ago when I made this, it was a fitted sleeve for me. No, I have not tried to see if this works as a fitted sleeve now, but we're going to be doing a lot of manipulations to this, so hopefully we can get this to work. However, I don't want to cut into this, so I'm going to go ahead and trace this onto either paper or fabric. I'm not really sure because we are following the tutorial in So Many Seams blog post, which I will link down below, but there's a lot of like slashing and spreading and changing that we have to do to get this. So yeah, I want kind of a blank slate to work with. Okay, so this is step one. We have divided the sleeve into 4 equal parts and cut along these lines almost all the way to the top. Now we can pull these over and overlap by 1/2 inch, which creates a greater curve down here. Now that we have our little overlapped parts, I'm supposed to turn this into a puff sleeve because I'm making this a puff tulip, and I'm not really sure if I can do that while I still have these like cut. Part of me almost thinks I might tape these because I don't want to keep making like copy after copy and wasting fabric, but I need to slash and spread here. So I need to draw a bunch of vertical lines and then open up just the top so that the bottom stays the same. But yeah, I don't want to waste fabric on that. So I'm going to attempt to tape this and then do that slashing and spreading. Well, I taped it up and then I cut it into the slash and spread, and I've arrayed everything very evenly here. So I think now I can go ahead and trace my pattern. This shows that we want the top curve to go a little above where this is going to give that extra height for that volume, so it'll be like up there, and then we will wind up making these little funky oval shapes that will like get drawn in, basically meeting kind of like the midpoint and then this point over here, so it'll be like this, and then I'll go around there, and then we'll do the other one the opposite side, and those become the tulip sleeves. And this is what those lines look like after they're drawn. Mine are definitely uneven, but my sleeve actually started out even. So honestly, I think what I'm gonna do is just like fold it in half, double check that the lines, or make the lines actually even, and make each piece the same front and back. And then I did want to make this as a mock-up, so obviously I can't use this as a mock-up because, you know, I will wind up cutting the same piece out of the same area. So I'll have to make a second one of one of the sides, but then hopefully I can just use this for my mock-up and see if it works. So I have the sleeve mock-up on, but I think as you can tell, it is just like way too much sleeve. I think because the double layer, like the crossover goes so far crossed over, it just winds up making like a really, really sturdy puff because it's 2 layers of gathering. And so it is like puffing straight up, and it's also just like really wide at the bottom, like really kind of loosey-goosey. And I don't think the tulip sleeve is supposed to be attached to itself at the bottom. Like I think it is supposed to be able to flap a little like that, but this is just not it. So yeah, back to the drawing board. I think what I'm going to try to do is literally just like decrease this pretty significantly. The other thing that I'm kind of tempted to do is like, does the underlapping part of the tulip sleeve actually have to cross over so much, or can like the over part cross over but then the under part just go to like here? Would that work instead of like here, like to go straight up and down instead of like that? Because that seems like it would make a lot of sense, and then you wouldn't get all this extra bulk right there. I don't know. First I'm just gonna try to reduce how big it is, because that definitely needs to happen just like overall everywhere. I like the length. I think that's the one thing I like about it, but the rest of this is just no. So time to rip this off and try mock-up number 2. All right, here is take 2 of the sleeve. As you can see, it is definitely better. I think I already threw away my scraps, but it was a pretty significant chunk that I cut off. Like basically I cut off both kind of the overall width, but then also because it's a curve, like it was cut off of like this portion and this portion, if that makes any sense. So it made it like shorter and also less quantity. I don't know how to describe this at all because it's such a weird shape. But yeah, it is definitely better. However, I just feel like the tulip lap, and maybe it's that I've lapped it the wrong way. You know what? Thinking about it now, because the tulip lap is like so subtle. And I don't know whether the tulip lap is supposed to go forwards or backwards, to come to think of it. I should probably look that up. But I just feel like regardless, it seems really subtle, and it makes me wonder where the underlap is, because I can't feel it. Oh, it's right here. Yeah, I don't know. Like, it feels like the lap is too much. And I almost am thinking I want to, like, cut away the lap so that it's less lap. Like, maybe it needs to be more drastic and less rounded. I don't know. I've got to stare at this in the mirror for a little bit. Also look up how it's supposed to lap, because whether it's supposed to be front over back or back over front, and we'll proceed from there. Okay, so yeah, I definitely have it lapped the wrong way. It's supposed to be like back over front. I have it front over back, so the lap is back here. This is the one that should be showing. I am going to bind mine, so it is going to look a lot more obvious, but I don't want it to lap all the way over here. So I was looking at like some pictures of tulip sleeves, and I think I do just need to cut it at a steeper sort of diagonal as opposed to like a more rounded curve like I have it, and hopefully that will be the answer. So I'm gonna try to see if I can just like cut away with it on here. I suppose I should redo the lap. Okay, I will unpick the part that's lapped, cut it away more, and hopefully have a winning tulip sleeve. So I think this is a lot better overall, but it does feel just like a little bit loosey-goosey down here now, and I think that's just because it needs to kind of be pulled up a little tighter on the edges. So I think I'll just kind of curve down, I guess, that top bit so that like this will wind up in the seam allowance. I don't think I need to mock that up further. I'll just kind of mark it and then take that out of the actual pattern. But yeah, I think that is the tulip sleeve that I was going for. Looks nice and puffed on top, but like not too puffed, and has a good kind of more obvious overlap there. So I like that quite a lot. I'm ready to cut off that little bit and then use this as a pattern for my others. If I can ever figure out the whole patterning thing, I would love to be able to offer this to you guys, but you all know that I have a pattern that I promised you like 2 years ago that hasn't actually happened yet. So maybe someday, keep your fingers crossed that I can actually learn patterning. Unfortunately, nobody is teaching that class at Costume College, which would have been really, really nice. Next year, if any of you are listening and know patterning and plan to maybe think about teaching a class, if you could teach how to digitize patterns at Costume College, that'd be super awesome. Just so you can see what that pattern wound up kind of looking like, it is kind of like a whale. So yeah, I have my points up here, gather from here, and then that's the shoulder seam, and that is where the lap goes to on each side. But yeah, that is the tulip sleeve. So as far as how these are actually assembled, first I serged along this little bit right here and this curved part that goes into the arm's eye, and then I sewed the two pieces together at the underarm. Now I've just put on the double fold bias tape all the way along the bottom and did that exactly like I did all of the other double fold bias tape on this project, and I've run gathering stitches up around here from my gathering mark and then all the way over to this edge. Now I have pulled up the gathering stitches like you see here, and I am going to overlap these, matching my marks for the shoulder and where like the edges go, because I've got other pink marks in there. I don't think you can see them, they kind of blend in pretty well, but I'm going to lap those, make each one of these like the reverse of each other because they are the same from side to side, but again, that tulip lap needs to be the front side. I think that looks really cute actually, but then I will be able to set them into the arm size and I will have tulip sleeves. The sleeves are on and they look so cute. I just love the look of that. I haven't tried it on yet, but I really, really like how that looks with everything. I think it just goes super nicely. So now that means the last thing left is the belt. So let's talk about how to make a belt. So first off, I did not find a covered buckle kit in my stash. You can't get them locally. So I saw a video from Serena, which I will link down below in the description, about how to cover just a regular buckle. So we are going to give that a go, make a fabric covered buckle and belt. This is a 1 5/8 inch belt belt buckle, but frankly, I measured this interior here. It's really 1.5 inches. So that means that we need to start off with a 4-inch wide strip for the belt. Generally speaking, I would use like fusible interfacing, as much as I hate it, for something like a belt. I couldn't find any in my stash, so I'm using whatever this is. Honestly, no idea. It seems to be partially fusible. Like, there are parts of this that have actually fused to the cotton, and then there are other parts that definitely have not. So I have it pinned. I'm going to serge around all of the edges now, and then I'm going to sew right sides together and turn out the tube. Before I turn it, I'm actually doing 2 additional things. I've already done them. One is I centered the seam. So the seam that I just made, I centered it and pressed it open, trying to take care not to press the sides. So basically, I was just taking like the point of my iron and going right along the seam. The other thing is that I have stitched in this curve right here, and that will be like the front little flappy bit of the belt, if that makes sense. But I wanted that to be a curve instead of like straight, and I also wanted this to be centered in the back of the belt. So that's why I've stitched that. Now I can go ahead and clip all of that and then turn this right side out. And this is what the belty part of the belt looks like, as opposed to the buckle, which we'll get to next. There will be a couple other things that we do with this, but it has to wait for the buckle. Things like we need to put eyelets in here, and obviously we need to attach this end into the buckle as well. So the first step in belt buckle creation is to cut out the fabric that we need. I'm hoping that you can see my pink on pink, but you want to draw like outside of the lines here, you know, like away, so that you have enough fabric to wrap onto the back. So that's what these lines notate, and I'm going to now cut this out. So this is what I've come up with size-wise, and I'm hoping that this proportion will work right and I won't have like too much or too little anywhere, because basically it has to wrap around from the front to the back and then get glued in place. Now, Serena used Mod Podge for hers, though she said she prefers spray glue. But frankly, I went and I grabbed out my Mod Podge, and I'm pretty sure that this dates back to when I used to do jigsaw puzzles, which was like years and years ago. So it does still have some liquid in it. Sorry if that just shook the camera, but I don't trust this whatsoever, and I feel like it might stain this color, like the fabric, to make it a different color. So I think I'm going to attempt to just use hot glue since I don't have spray glue, and hopefully I won't burn my fingers to pieces. Oh, one other bit that I didn't mention is that besides cutting like the little notches around where the middle part of the buckle is here, so I've got like these little notches there, you also want to cut little notches into the corners so that you can actually like fold this up and curve this around. I'm honestly not sure that my notches are large enough, so I may have to cut them a little larger, but it's a start. Okay, I forgot to start my camera for the very beginning of this because I was having problems with my glue gun, but I have glued down the corners, and now I'm going to put you onto a like fast forward speed mode, and we'll see if the rest of this can glue down just as easily. And that is the finished covered buckle. Is it the neatest thing in the world? Probably not, but it looks pretty darn good, to be honest, and hopefully it will last for this belt. So now let's go ahead and put the belt together. So the first thing you want to do is figure out where to put your first eyelet, and I'm not going to worry about the serging being on the back of the belt, like that's fine with me, but I want my first eyelet to go about here. So basically I just folded this little pokey thing the other way and then folded this over. I want this to take up pretty much half of the belt buckle, and then I will be able to mark my eyelet here because that little pokey thing will go through that, and I'm sure that has a proper name, but you know, I don't know it. That looks right. Now you could go and you could actually make an eyelet around here, but frankly, I'm not going to worry about that because I don't feel like I've ever had a problem with this little bit fraying right here. So instead, I'm just going to go ahead and sew it down over here. Next up, you're going to want to find where this eyelet needs to go. So put on the belt, now that it is all sewn on the inside. I guess I should show you that. You have to do that by hand because the buckle's in the way to do it otherwise. So that is sewn by hand, and then you put on the belt, and you find where you want to do eyelets. Now, of course, you can always add more eyelets later depending on how tight you want your belt. I think that this is a pretty good spot for an eyelet right here. So you do want to be careful because, of course, like where you're putting the eyelet, where you're holding it right here, is not actually where it's kind of going to sit. So you do have to kind of factor that in. But yeah, I think right here is a pretty good place for an eyelet. This one I do recommend that you either do like a hand eyelet, or if you have a machine that does actual functional eyelets, you can do it on that. But you do want a functional eyelet here that is wrapped with thread or even a grommet or something like that, or else it is going to just like pull out of your belt and fray the whole thing. I decided to just go ahead and do one hand-bound eyelet because I couldn't bother to take my machine out for just one. It's a different sewing machine. So that is it for this project. Now let's go put it on. How I feel about this project overall. Honestly, I am really very happy with it. I think that it's super comfortable for one thing. Like, this is a much lighter weight cotton than you get at Joann's nowadays, and it just feels a lot easier to wear. Like, I think this is going to be perfect for summer, honestly. Like, it's just such a nice lightweight cotton. It's not a voile or anything. Like, it's still a quilting cotton, I'm pretty sure, but it just feels lighter and softer, and I really, really appreciate that. It's also very comfortable overall as a dress beyond just the fabric. Like, the fit and everything is very comfortable. It is a little bit large in the waist, but of course when I have the belt on here, you don't see that at all, so I'm glad about that. I really do like the contrast belt. I think it adds a whole lot to it. I'm torn about the sleeves, honestly. I love the idea of them, and I do think that it looks nice as an overall ensemble, and it's cool to have tulip sleeves on a tulip dress. That said, I don't think they're very flattering on me. I think they make me look very wide-shouldered, very like broad across the shoulders. So I don't think it's the most flattering look, but they are really cute. I'd be curious to try a non-puffed tulip sleeve in the future, so I can definitely see myself trying them again on another project, because kind of like the fabric, they are very light and breezy, and I think that they are a great sleeve for summer because you kind of do get that extra like breeze going on in there, since they're really just attached up at the top here and they're kind of open down here. So yeah, again, very comfortable, and I think, again, perfect for summer. I'm very much debating about taking this dress with me on my England trip, but yeah, I do really, really enjoy this. I think the tulip pockets are just absolutely fabulous. Like, I was worried about the size, that they were oversized. They're not oversized. They are perfect size. I can fit everything in here. I had like my phone in here, my sunglasses in here, like, ugh. So good. Love it. Love the colors. Love like the overall print. So yeah, overall, I can see myself wearing this a whole lot. It took me way longer than I had anticipated. I thought this was going to be like a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks max project, but
Obviously theater and life and stuff got in the way, but I'm glad that I stuck with it because I really do like this dress, and I'm glad that I didn't cut any of the corners on like doing these extra embellishments because I really do like all of these embellishments. So anyway, that is going to be it for me on this project. If you like this video, please go ahead and click the thumbs up icon, and if you'd like to see more videos like this from me, please go ahead and click subscribe and the little bell icon to be notified every time I post a new video. I do post videos here on YouTube at least once a week with my sewing vlogs like this out on Tuesdays and sometimes additional content out on Saturdays, but I post every day over on my Instagram, so please go follow me on Instagram. That's at Lady Rebecca Fashions. And if you'd like to help support all of the work that I do on this channel, I do have a link to my Patreon and my Ko-fi down in the description below, or you can send me a super thanks right here on YouTube. I'd also like to give a special shout out to my Edwardian level patrons, Sharon, Mirage, Laura, Jean, and Janelle. Thank you all so much for joining me today. I hope you all have a wonderful week, and I will see you very soon in my next video. Happy sewing!